Something that pisses me right the fuck off is the lack of bilingual education in just general in most countries, and mine being a prime example. I saw this post on Tumblr about how Americans are pissed off at the fact, like, at these, it was how that American education doesn't ensure bilingualism for any other language, pretty much. Whereas there are tons of other countries where you have, kids learning, at least one other language, a lot of them being in Europe because of the different languages that are there. But then if you even just, like, go up to Canada, which is actually excels in education in terms of things like math, science, English, etc., you would think that we still have the same problem. And the problem is even worse up here when you consider the fact that Canada is a bilingual country. We have 2 official languages. And yet, if you live in an Anglo part of Canada, it's very unlikely you'll end up getting to learn French enough to use it in daily conversation unless you went into immersion. Whereas the French kids who live in Franco parts of Canada, i.e. mostly Quebec, but there are a few other places that are French. Anyways, so if you live in the Franco part, you'll pretty much guaranteed to be bilingual, unless you're in one of the more, like, smaller areas where it's not as emphasized or needed. And I understand that if you're, say, in Alberta, you're not going to need to know French because, like, there's no Francos there. But, I mean, fucking Ontario, or even worse, Ottawa. Ottawa is a very bilingual city. In fact, it's hard to get a job in most of Ottawa, unless you're in the very West End, unless you know fucking both French and English. You have to know both to get the most bottom line of jobs, like a shitty minimum wage job at McDonald's. You need to be bilingual in most of the city to get that fucking job. Like, you would think a city that has that much requirement for bilingual in every fucking field, and there have even been cases of people who have their fucking master's degree, they're overqualified for positions, but because they don't pass the top, like, they have to know, like, French better than most people know English, they can't get a decent paying job in Ottawa because they need to be past a certain level of bilingualism, whereas if you're a French person, you could have the most broken English ever, but you could get the same job with less qualifications. Like, I don't know why French is so much more mandatory than English, even though the rest of the world speaks English. Not the rest of the world, sorry, I meant most of the world speaks English, which, I mean, is not, I know the historical badness of that, but anyways, you would think that it would be more mandatory to know the language, but no, and it's so frustrating, because the thing is that it's not like they can't teach us to be bilingual. I mean, the French kids can learn English, why can't we learn French? And I know for a fact it is fucking possible, because in grade 9, core applied French, which, in case you don't know how the school stuff works here, basically it's like the bottom level French, except for maybe locally developed is the only one below that, but most people don't end up in locally developed. It's more for kids with learning disabilities. But anyways, so in the bottom level French, I learned more French in that one semester, because here it's like one semester you have 4 classes, and then different 4 classes second semester. So anyways, I learned more French in that one class than I had in the 8 years prior of having 2 classes in French, both having French class and social studies in French. I learned more French in that 1 year, and it was bottom level compared to being, like, middle level of the 8 years prior. Like, you know your system is broken when that, because the thing is that every year prior, it was just teaching us random words, not explaining how to use them, and, passé composé, I didn't know what the fuck that meant until grade 9, they kept on having to put, they list all the four different tenses, and we'd have to put the j'ai, tu, il, elle, vous, nous, il, elle with an S, and then, like, we got être, and starts with an A. I can't remember even now. Fuck. Anyway, so basically just having us copy down shit all the time and not actually explaining what it was or how to use it or anything else. I didn't learn what future tense and all these different things. I didn't learn that. Oh wait, this is just. I had no idea what it was, and I was too afraid to ask. And it was, oh, we're learning past tense and how to say, like, I did something, or I am something, or I was something. Or we're learning future tense, oh, I will be, instead. And I have, oh, have is the A one, and it's, no, that sounds totally wrong, and I can't even fucking remember. I just know it's j'ai, tu as, il, I, avant, and allons, but anyways, but yeah, so, like, we're not learning anything, and it's only up till grade 9 mandatory. After that, it's optional, and besides, they only really offer it as an optional class in grade 10, unless, of course, you're in immersion, which, even then, all it is that most of your classes, like every class they can put in French, is in French, so things like math, or gym, or science, or whatever. So, like, my sister is decently bilingual, and she was in immersion, and my brother wasn't bilingual at all until he went to RMC and CMR, which is the two Royal Military Colleges, so you need to be, so they teach you French, and he has only been in there for like 4 years, and he's fully bilingual. So it is completely fucking possible, and at the same time, he was fucking studying advanced physics and fucking calculus while tutoring like frickin' everybody in his class. And he managed, with that, and learning everything that has nothing to do with the French, he managed to become from unilingual to bilingual in 4 years, while having an education not based on that language. So it is very fucking possible for us to come out of the school system, the public school system, or even the Catholic school system like I went into there, knowing this shit. And I think we have to take a literacy test in grade 10. We have to have a certain comprehension of math to graduate. We have to have a certain comprehension of English to graduate. The English class, you have to have a certain grade, all this other stuff. You have to have a certain comprehension of all these different subjects to graduate, while also having freaking volunteer hours to graduate. It has all these requirements to graduate. You have to have an art credit to graduate. Why isn't a certain level of bilingualism necessary to graduate? That just seems like it would make more sense, especially in this, like, especially if you live in Ottawa or some other bilingual city or part of the country. I think it should be countrywide, but at the very least, could you do it for a city where you can't get a shitty job at McDonald's, or you have a harder time? It's not impossible, but they're gonna, if there's someone who their first language is French and they have about the same level of English understanding, they're more likely to hire that person. You should be able to, if it's that required in the city you live in, it should be that taught. Like, that required to graduate. So you're like, oh, I graduated from high school. Oh, you probably, you know the French. There you go. I can't remember what the qualification thingy is. But no, not at all. I was in the Catholic school system, thanks to my Catholic mother, and we had mandatory religion class. Fucking religion class until grade 12. So, except the things I thought, well, public school kids maybe? They have, more time for French? No, same sort of thing when it comes to French. Same sort of lack of knowledge. It's so frustrating, because it's a lot harder to learn it when you get out of high school, because, college courses don't focus on it unless you actually take a college course in French, and but then you gotta pay for that, compared to school system being free and mandatory, whereas college is optional, and you could do it online, but it's a lot harder to do that, because you have to do it all, you have to stick with it with yourself, or you can move to Montreal and do immersion, literally immersion, having oh shit, fuck, at least Montreal is fairly bilingual. It's kind of like how Ottawa is bilingual, but more English than French, although it's becoming more pretty, if you're in the West End, it's English, but then the rest of the city is more French than English, and then Montreal's kind of more French than English, but still fairly bilingual, but yeah. And Ottawa is, because the thing is that the reason why it's so bilingual is it's right on the border between Ontario and Quebec, the national capital region, because Ottawa's the national capital. It includes Gatineau, which is in Quebec, And you can't learn French by going to Gatineau, because everyone in Gatineau speaks English, and they would rather speak English to you than speak French when you're not fully bilingual. Hell, my mom was speaking French perfectly one time in a store, and the guy heard her speaking English to us, and then the rest of the conversation he refused to speak French to her. And besides, you do not want to learn French from someone from Gatineau, because they have such a bad accent. Like, the rest of Quebec is like, dude, they talk like they have a potato in their mouth. Their tongue is stuck to the roof of their mouth. They talk like this, and they go to play like it's so awful. Anyways, so it's really hard to learn French from them, because like most of what they're talking about is slang that the rest of the fucking country doesn't understand. Like, literally, people call them gat rats. People from Gatineau. So that's just how bad it is. Not everyone, obviously, but especially Hull, which is like right on the border where most the French people you go to, like, to get to actual Gatineau where they don't speak like awfully, it's like a good distance away, and the bus system there, STO, is fucking awful. But anyways, talking too much, thanks for listening.